Welcome back to Real Life PMP Podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Richards, and in this episode, we continue our conversation with Lori Schoenhard in part 2 of our series. Lori has been a pioneer in many aspects of project management, and today we're focusing on one of her early adaptations, working remotely long before it became the norm. In this episode, Lori shares her top 3 tips for successfully working remotely, drawing from years of experience. We also delve into the importance of networking and how it has played a crucial role in her career development. Let's dive into part 2 with Lori. I don't know if you remember the point in your career where you said, I've been doing this and I love it. Was there something, was it a class that you took? Was it just, enrolling into your master's program? You're like, this is what I want to do, but from a job that you did, was there a moment where you're like, this is what I want to do? And oh my gosh, I've been doing this for umpteenth years.
Yeah, it was in that first 7 years of really transitioning into tech where I wore a lot of different hats. It was almost like, I'm going to try the hat of being a full stack web developer. I'm going to try the hat on of being an account executive. I'm going to try the hat on of being a trainer, right? And then I thought, you think what you know, and I thought I wanted to be a business analyst, a business systems analyst. I'm like, that sounds really interesting. So that's where I broke off. And then I did that for 2 years in corporate America. And realized, nope, bad decision. This is really boring. I don't want to do that. I wanted to lead and drive, and I wanted to do that. And so then that was the true pivot into the roles of the program project management PMO that I then took, because it was like, you know what, I tried it. I did it very successfully. I don't want to do that, so it was, oh, Lori, but remember when you were here and you did this, the college experiences, the entry level experiences. And so that's when I started to work for digital agencies as a digital PM for a number of years. And then really starting to build out that SaaS, which is a natural transition from working for a digital agency. And that's really where the road took me, was within that first 7 to 8 years of my experience.
That's awesome. Yeah. I remember having that moment. It was more along the lines of training, because I was at a point at my job as a federal contractor where I said, oh my gosh, I want to jump ship again. But I said, wherever I go, there I am, right? Like it's right. The grass is brown everywhere. Like, what is it that really gets me excited? And I did have that moment of like, I really love training. And, was with that company and, they were very supportive of, okay, let's set up a training arm, a service line within our practice. And they were very supportive of that. And I think to this day, they still have that training arm. I'm actually getting ready to see my old boss in a week. And then just kind of growing from that of like weaving in my project management experience to set up that service line, just doing all, but it was like, I love this. And I think when you have those moments and recognize that it's okay that you don't like it, but I think it's important to have that introspection and then do something about it, or just, be okay with being content. But I think, I would probably guess, just like what I did, you tapped into your networks, tapped into reaching out to people, right? And
I did.
Those opportunities. Talk a little bit about your experience with that, because I think people don't realize how important your network is. Your network. Oh my gosh.
Again, that's a whole nother podcast for a different day, Crystal. But, it's the first 7 years, I met a lot of different people in different organizations. And so working for a professional services group like that, you naturally build your professional network with different clients, different types of clients. And then going into corporate America, I would say in that situation I was in, it was much more narrow. Like the professional network you built were your coworkers primarily, maybe some vendors. But I distinctly remember, when I wanted to jump back into full-time PM, when I interviewed, I applied and interviewed, and this was different times, but I applied and interviewed for one role, local role. And she goes, the C-suite person I interviewed with, she goes, Lori, I'm not necessarily interested in the last role you had, but I'm interested in the first role you had. Like, it's great you were a business systems analyst, but I actually want to look at your job before, when I was working for the the website development company because that
Okay.
was more applicable, right? But because I had that network, because of that experience, because I was like, okay, wonderful. Now you can call if you need references, call on this person, this person, this person, right, from my professional network as a reference for that role. And I thought that was a really interesting comment. And I think that's something to also think about. We all have these experiences along almost like Lego blocks that you build upon.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's a
then
great
sometimes,
analogy.
right, it's 3 jobs ago that you can pull experiences from. And frankly, this just happened to me last week. Somebody was asking me about some advice that I had done several years ago. But because I had that experience several years ago, I was able to pull that forward to today. So don't turn down opportunities, take that interview, meet that person for coffee, whatever that means, because you never know where that's going to lead. And then there's the whole concept about strategically networking with the right people to land the right type of roles that you're
Right.
looking for. But I think don't just narrow on that for looking for a job. Who can I meet? Who can I learn from? If I had not reached out to you, we wouldn't have this conversation today,
Yeah.
right? I would have just been someone sitting in your class learning a lot about office politics, right?
Right,
And
right.
gaining a lot from that, but then take the next step. Send that email, send that LinkedIn message, meet them for coffee, meet them at a PMI event, whatever that might be. I
Yeah.
think it's extremely important to do.
It is because I think for us as project managers, it can be lonely. Sometimes we're the
Very
only
lonely.
one, right? We're the only
Yeah.
one, and you're sitting in there in the office, if you have an office, and you're like, is it me?
Mm-hmm.
Did I, is it me? And it's not you. Like,
Yeah.
this is the nature of just herding cats. And
Yes.
sometimes when you think people are supporting you and the project, and it's just not a priority for them anymore. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily you, just things happen in the business. And when you can lean and talk to other people and say, has this happened to you? And you're like, oh yeah, several times. It's like, it's validating that
And
you're not
for
crazy.
and for people to be authentic and open up to say that, you'd be really, I
Mhm.
mean, ego gets in the way too. Everyone has the ego. Oh, that never happened to me. My project's always perfect. No way.
No, they're
No
not.
way. And then the other thing that's interesting with my experience, so I live in the Midwest, I live in Iowa,
Okay.
and there are PM opportunities locally for me, but not the type of PM opportunities I might necessarily want to pursue. So I
Okay.
worked remotely now since 2016, 2015,
Mm. You were working
which
remotely before it became
before it was a
popular.
thing, right? Before it was cool. And so I think that brings its own challenges about networking and meeting people and reaching out. It just takes a little extra, a little bit more. If you're leading teams and you want to meet people and you want to establish rapport, it takes a little bit more effort than if you were in the office hybrid or even full time.
Sure, sure. So tell me, what are your top three I see, I guess top three tips as a remote project manager that because you've got more under your belt than people who were like, oh, it's, COVID and it's
Mm-hmm.
2020. You've got that additional 4 years, but prior to 2020 to have
Mm-hmm.
created this framework for yourself. So what were the top three things that you have discovered that can be success that can have helped you be successful being a remote project manager?
Yep. I'm going to talk about the people aspect of it first. You can talk about
Mhm.
how to run projects and Jira boards and all that. That's important too. But if you
When you
don't
said
have a
Jira, boards, I thought Ouija board, but I'm
oh
sure
no, no, well, there's that
it
maybe too.
feels
But
like a
anyway,
Ouija board.
will this
It's
project be
like,
successful? Yes or no? Sometimes it feels like that.
I
No,
don't know why I popped in my
hey, yeah, that's fine. But it's like so during those early times pre-COVID, maybe when budgets were a little more free flowing,
head.
there was travel involved, right? So I
Mm.
would fly to the East Coast where the companies that were based. I would fly out there at least once a quarter, maybe once a month, meet with the team. I took full advantage. We would go out for lunch together. We would go out for drinks after work together. I got to know them as people. I'm still friends with people that I worked with back then that live out on the East Coast. I think that's fantastic, right? Because having that rapport with them, having that friendship with them, and all the kind of hidden jokes about work and whatnot helps projects go a lot more smoothly. Now,
Uh-huh.
now, COVID, that was really challenging. No travel, no nothing. So what did you have to do as a remote employee? You had to use different methods. It was, hey, let's have a virtual happy hour. Let's do this ice breaking thing. How are you doing? Reaching out one-on-one. How's your family doing? How are you doing? Hey, your daughter just had a child. How is that? Get to know them as people and care about them as people. I remember one conversation. I was working for a company and we were doing a merger and acquisition. We were acquiring another company. And there was a director of customer success that joined our company, and she was based in Minneapolis. And it was a rough M&A for a number of reasons.
Okay.
But I remember I reached out to her and just said, hey, how's it going? Because she was going to have to work with me. How's it going? What are you up to? I found out she was an opera singer. I found out we had a lot of things in common, and she said, Lori, she goes, you were the only person that wanted to know me as a person rather than just a headcount role, to pick my brain about my job that I was fearing I was going to lose, And that would be the advice I would give. Like, go out of your way to meet people, do those virtual one-on-ones, virtual happy hours, networking events, ice-breaking events that you can do. And you do it within your company, but then frankly, do it outside of your company too, because that's where the networking comes into play. That you won't be so alone, because there are many times where maybe there's just a staff of 3, 4, 5 PMs, or like PMOs are they're not centralized and you're kind of in your own bubble. There's been many times where I've called people like yourself or others to go, I need help. What do you think? This happened to me. Is this right?
Right.
What did you do in this situation? I need some advice.
No, that is so on point.
I think you have to do those things. And then, like I said, we could talk all day about virtual tools and techniques about how to be a PM, but the people aspect to me comes first.
I mean, it's something that I always teach. It's something that I've always made it a point, even as a consultant. I've been a consultant since 2015. I was made a point to go to the client side, because I want them to feel comfortable and share things that gives me insight about how to maybe navigate a topic, and maybe bring that up where this, participants are like, oh my gosh, she gets us. She understands what we're going through. Like, one of my favorite clients, every time I talk, her daughter's into swimming. She's doing Olympic trials. Like, I'm like, how's she doing? I have like a niece-in-law who is, at a local school, who's also in swimming. And it's like, she's like, oh, I know her name. But, it's just like all this excitement that really drives the relationship. And all it takes is, a good 5-10 minutes, and it can make the relationship be that much stronger when you get to know someone as a person. So I'm really glad that you said that, beyond like have a dedicated space, right? Like,
have a board and all those things. No. Like, there's so much more. I think that's the nuances and the secret sauce of being a great PM. That's what it's about, right? I will never forget. And it's a small thing maybe for someone, but it was a big thing to me. Several years ago, working for a company based in New Hampshire, and the VP, he was really closely tied with like the Bruins and the Red Sox. And he took a group of us to a Bruins game. I'd never been to a professional hockey game before. And he took us there, a group of us from work, and it was so much fun. And it was just those things where, like, now we talked about that for weeks. We fed on that little experience for weeks about, I remember that guy, he ate all that food, and but it was a good time. And those are the things that leaders do, I think, is to bring people together. But my experience in the last few years, especially in the COVID era, and even afterwards, where many times I was like, I would love to travel. I'm sorry, travel budgets are reduced. You can't fly there. It's only for particular reasons. I think companies should really look at, when is it really important and priority for core team members to meet each other in person for project kickoffs or quarterly, meetings, status reports, whatever they might be, because I think it does hamper the ability for teams to work together. I'm very much still a strong component supporter of remote work. But I think there is a blend of, there needs to be a little bit of office time too.
I agree as well. And I think I think it's something that can be asked as a part of the interview, at least so that you're aware. Because I think sometimes we have that assumption, but and it's scary, right? Because whenever they say on the job description,
Yeah.
like 10% travel, you're like, just double it. So
Right.
you're cautious about asking, is there a
Right.
budget for traveling? But I think it is the more advanced thinking, more mature in terms of the project management know-how project manager knows to realize that interpersonal co-location aspect is just as important. Like the conferences that we go to, you get more out of it. Sometimes I get more out of it than actual sessions, but it's the networking outside, right? And it's the same thing with work. You get more out of those interpersonal connections and getting to know people on an individual level. And I just love that you highlighted that with your experience, part of the secret sauce to your success. Absolutely.
Well, and it's even reading the room. It's harder to do virtually. It's harder to do in these little boxes that you and I are living in now, where, if you're in a conference room, I remember this. I can visualize this situation in my mind. It's burned in my memory. But if you're in a conference room and there's a number of executives or senior leaders that you're working with at the table, you can start to see how they're reacting to each other, their body language, their nonverbal cues to go, that's how I'm going to have to navigate.
Yes.
This
That topic ticks
situation.
him off, right?
That is, I just saw him give him a look, a side eye, like, don't say that to him outside of that. But had I not experienced that in real life in the room, then I would have known not to step on a landmine about something.
Exactly. Oh yeah, absolutely. And then just even being present early in a meeting and having that small talk. That small talk is so crucial to part of the development of the relationship and getting to know people.
Agree. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hey, how was your weekend? Hey, knowing that someone loves a Harley Davidson, like this was a great weekend. And then they'll take the conversation from there and you don't have to say anything. And they're
you just kind of sit back and let it roll, right?
Exactly. And then they're like, you're such a great conversationalist. You're like, I said nothing. Oh, thank you so much. So that's a wrap for part 2 of my conversation with Lori. Her tips for successful remote work, the emphasis on networking, and sharing that moment of realization when project management became our calling have been truly insightful. I hope you found value in this episode's discussion and feel inspired by Lori's experiences and advice. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to join us for part 3, where we continue to uncover more of Lori's journey and wisdom. Thank you for listening to Real Life PMP. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with your colleagues and friends. Your support helps me bring more valuable content to project managers everywhere. Until next time, peace and blessings.